Welcome back, everyone. Apologies for those that were able to attend our keynote speech with Elaine McMillian Sheldon. It was a beautiful talk, and unfortunately it was cut short. So we're going to move into our next session. Thank you to Lynn and everyone else who was able to help get us back up to speed. I'm going to be welcoming Lo Jackson. I'm thrilled to introduce them in their first essay reading, Living on the Fence Line. A little bit about Lo Jackson. Lo is a filmmaker from New Orleans, Louisiana. She was born in St. Bernard Parish and graduated from Loyola with a degree in English and a concentration in film. They're going to be sharing some projections and some ideas about how they feel the next 100 years of their hometown in Arabi will be under the refineries, the sugar refineries in Arabi. So Lo, I'm pleased to welcome you and to pass the spotlight over to you so that you can share your beautiful essay with us. Thank you for being here.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. To Clint and Zuri, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And I just want to say this really hits close to home for me. So sorry if I become emotional. I just wanted to give you all that disclaimer. So here we go. From what I remember, my childhood was perfect. Although, like any other family, we had our struggles. My memories are of the good times, outdoors with family and friends. One of those memories is of my best friend Trent and I on his grandparents' boat, jumping from the very top straight into the bayou, swimming around without a care in the world, falling in love with the murky waters while joking about the alligators not 20 feet away. Floating our bodies in these Louisiana wetlands provided us the ultimate beauty in looking at the wide, sprawling roots of the huge cypress trees, running our hands through the swamp grass, and catching all the frogs we could get our hands on. We fished, played sports, and were essentially outside every chance we got. I consider myself a levee kid. That is, I walked around those thin concrete walls with ease, my backdrop being the horizon of the city of New Orleans. I was always exploring the abandoned wharfs along the levee, which bordered the Mississippi River, breaking into cutout fences and walking around the old buildings, marveling at all the spray-painted walls and 18th century equipment. For the 4th of July, it was always a treat setting off our plenty of fireworks on side of the levee and watching the ones from far on the other side of the Mississippi in New Orleans. Being outside was my church. I practiced it every day and worshiped the sun. My parents had to peel me off the pavement after laying on it for so long. It gave me solace being able to run around my small town and skateboard the homemade ramps my dad made for me and my friends. We knew when to go inside when the mosquito man made his rounds spraying on the block. I grew up in St. Bernard Parish in the smallest town known as Old Arabi, or New Orleans' historic neighbor. Arabi in general is known for widespread fertile farmland. My neighbor next door was a horse pasture with goats, chickens, and too many dogs to count. My parents grew up in St. Bernard, built their house themselves in 2001, and still keep up with the ivy growing on the front walls of their house every weekend. Outside their house, you see the horizon of the oldest refinery in the parish, Domino Sugar. My home sits about 3 blocks away from this ominous, dilapidated, yet still functional building, and I used to love to watch the sunset over its windows, many of them smashed in, creating a mesmerizing golden reflection. I also always look forward to the Christmas season when there would be a giant Christmas hat atop one of its stacks. I even look forward to the Sugar Fest where we could get free bags of sugar and enjoy all the sweet vendors. The industry never seemed weird or negative, just a part of my home. Even to this day, I find peace coming home from the city, driving down St. Bernard Highway, taking in the pastures, live oaks, and nature around me. The refineries have always supported the parish. They sponsor all fun festivals such as Crawfish Fest, the Tomato Festival, and even the Los Isleños, their logo always on some poster or vendor sign. Even New Orleans' local jazz fest has shell symbols on seemingly every stage poster. The schools and local government even get donations from each refinery as a thank you of sorts for being neighbors. It wasn't until one night Trent and I were hanging out by the levee next to Domino's refinery that I saw it in an entirely different light. It was around 2 a.m. when we pulled up to our usual smoke spot, and as we got out of the car, there was a huge fireball that exploded above the refinery. It lit up the entire street, and all we could do was run away, and it was as if I was noticing the truth of the building in front of me for the first time. This 100-year-old sugar plantation that I admired for my entire childhood was actually in immediate danger capable of serious damage. It was frightening not knowing what's going to happen next, and what shocked me most was the quiet after that loud explosion, as if representative of the silence that surrounds the dark side of industry in my entire community. I never knew what happened, and to this day, that imagery still haunts me with the fear of what would have happened if the explosion had been bigger. Since then, I've been hyper aware of the detrimental effects of industries on the home that I grew up in. I started to notice dust and sediment on my parents' cars, and a terrible smell that surrounds Chalmette Refinery and wafts throughout the entire parish, and even the city of New Orleans when the wind is right. I also realized that the rotten egg smell had always been around, just such a constant that I never connected it with the refineries. Even the worker safety signs out front of the entrances had a more impactful meaning to me after that day. I was in college when this incident took place and was taking Garrett Bradley's documentary filmmaking class, which sent me down the rabbit hole into making my film Fence Line. I interviewed historians, longtime residents, and even my own family on their thoughts and fears about the plants. It's still a work in progress, but my ultimate goal is to show all sides where my community can make their own cognitive choice. Are these refineries viable for another 100 years? Both Chalmette Refining and Domino Sugar have been around since the early 1900s and have grown exponentially, and the community's dependence on them has grown as well. Their presence has become a part of our community. There are oil billboards everywhere promoting the positive they claim to provide the city, either through jobs or through tax revenue directly to local government, schools, and even our aquarium. Not only do these industries provide jobs directly, they also provide patrons to many mom and pop shops whose main clientele are refinery workers. The local high school even has a trade program that trains graduates for 6 months and provides them with a job that pays seemingly well, creating a school to industry pipeline. The industry provides money to the town, and the town provides a constant supply of workers. Personally, my whole family lives in and loves the parish and has no intention of moving away. I have cousins who work for Domino Sugar and rely on the industry to support their families. Even though my family and neighbors seem to benefit from these industries, I've learned that they affect personal health as well as the health of the land we love and rely on. We don't call it the Dirty South for nothing. One immediate concern of mine is the effects of the runoff and extended exposure of pollution on the seafood industry. One concerning incident was when I saw on the news that runoff into the Mississippi River turned parts of the river a neon green color, creating toxic waste in the same water source we use for tap water. Fishing, crabbing, and shrimping provide an income to many people in St. Bernard, and seafood is also a cultural staple in the community. Almost every gathering includes boiling one or more of our delicious local seafoods. I'm worried about how the quality of life will be affected if industry keeps increasing. I've noticed the loss of greenland and pastures I used to love to admire. As industry continues to grow, agricultural workers who depend on cheap land are bought out in order to expand these industries. The potential promise of money and tax revenue wins out over the quality of life for the community. As people, we are dependent on oil and gas, and I realize it's unrealistic to cut out all production, but I'm hopeful that changes are possible that improve the situation for employees, the environment, and the community as a whole. These companies are extremely profitable and should be encouraged to be as efficient and safe as possible instead of solely focused on profit. The companies know the danger they present and actively cover it up, and so the community unfortunately may not shift its mindset until after a tragedy has personally affected them and their loved ones. Until tragedy hits, the refineries are just a normal part of life to many. However, I'm not alone in my thinking, and am encouraged by the many organizations looking to reduce new chemical production plants and spread awareness about their effects. Some notable organizations are Rise St. James and Louisiana Bucket Brigade, Gulf South for a Green New Deal, and 350 New Orleans, all inspiring grassroots movements working to improve Louisiana. I love Araby and even feel a homey feeling when I see the refineries in the backdrop of a beautiful Louisiana sunset. I'm sorry, guys. So sorry. Give me a moment. I'm very sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, Lo, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful words. And, it does make sense that this is emotional because this is your sanctuary. And that's what we're here to talk about is, this space of peace and comfort and home that we know, and what it means to us, what's threatening it, and how we make choices to preserve it. So thank you so much for being vulnerable, for sharing your words, and just, giving us a vivid, striking portrait of what it is to be a Levee kid, right? To be growing up on the bayou. I really, really appreciate that. Your essay again strikes up really like striking images, right? You're floating on your back in the Mississippi River, not Mississippi River, but the swamp, floating between cypress knees with the alligator just 20 feet away, right? That feels like a strong metaphor for the refineries, this idea of being in peaceful waters, but just 20 feet away or close by, there's this sleeping danger. So like your essay, your work has really striking visuals as well that's rooted in folklore. Your work with Fenceline, which is a work in progress, we're going to get a chance to take a look at that. And we have the first clip that we're going to share. So we're going to play that clip, and then you could tell us a little bit about it. And then we'll, of course, play your second clip. We'll talk about it and get into the Q&A if you feel good. How are you feeling?
Thank you. I'm feeling great. I'm so sorry, everyone.
No, don't be
The last
sorry.
paragraph is always hitting me, and I would like to finish if you don't mind, because I think
Oh,
I think I can get through it.
oh
Um,
yes, I'm here with you. Let me know what you need. I'm here for you.
Thank you. Okay, this is the end, you guys. Again, apologies for crying on y'all. However, I want a future that supports the health and prosperity of all my neighbors and one which shares the abundance throughout the community. As a sister, aunt, and cousin, I especially worry about the future children. Will my aunt's 100-year-old magnolia trees still be blooming every summer? Will those levee walls still be intact? And how much air can they breathe in without smelling nasty, pungent smells? Nowadays, what brings me peace is riding all the way down the road, stopping by the snowball stand, getting a sweet treat, and heading down to what's known as the end of the world in Delacroix, where the wetlands begin and the road ends to watch that beautiful sunset. My home brought me so much joy as a child, and I hope it continues to provide that for many generations to come. Thank you so much. Sorry, I just wanted to finish that because it's definitely true to my heart and very close to me.
Again, thank you again for being vulnerable and sharing that with us. And, with the refineries, really, those who are in New Orleans understand the skyline being ominous, beautiful, and at the same time terrifying. So thank you for contextualizing that and being vulnerable with us. So yeah, if you want, we can either talk about this first clip, which is the introduction of your work in progress, or we can play it and then talk about it however you feel comfortable. Moving into this next so that we can give audiences a visual of what you're talking about in your hometown.
Yeah, I would love that. We could play the clip
Okay.
for sure. Thank you.
I was on the advisory committee for the refinery before Katrina hit, and Albert Strunk, who was the head of Chalmette Refining at the time, he was from Holland. And when he came on, the very first thing I asked him when he introduced himself, and he says, "Are there any questions?" I said, "Yeah, I got one for you." I said, "My question to you is, what is your impression of this plant here in St. Bernard Parish?" And he looked at me and he says, "Frankly, I'm shocked." He says, "I've never seen a refinery with people living on the fence line." He says, "There's usually a buffer zone around it." He says, "This is new to me." He says, "I'm from Europe, I've been in Thailand, I've been around the world." He says, "I've never seen people right on the fence line like this, whole communities." And it kind of all grew up together, but they grew up around the refinery.
So can you tell us a little bit about, give intro a little context, what's happening in that clip?
Yes, so this was actually started back in 2017 while I was still in college, and I was speaking to Ron Chapman, who is a local historian who had a lot of words to say, but mainly was kind of giving us an introduction to how St. Bernard Parish is, bordered by all these refineries, as well as hand in hand with them, as we can see in those visuals. But daily life still continues. People still go to work, people still go to school, You know, there's a whole thriving community around these refineries. And I think that's really the main point that I wanted to get across in the introduction.
Yeah, so it's just basically introducing us to the town and the people and just like the landscape. But in this next clip, we're gonna really get into the issues that are threatening the sanctuary and threatening this town. So if we can play this next clip.
These refineries, you know, bring in a lot of tax revenue. The city's totally dependent upon that. It's kind of a yin yang. You know, you have the dark side is that you have these big refineries here that could potentially have problems. You have the occasional smells that come out. You don't know what the air is always like. On the good side is if it wasn't for the refineries, you wouldn't have a community here. We need them for that tax base. So it's, you kind of have to live with the devil, so to speak, in that regard. Because yeah, it'd be great if this was all pristine, but then nobody would be living here because there wouldn't be an income. In other words, if I want to keep a good relationship with the community, I'm going to try to spend money in that community as best I can. But again, it doesn't alter the fact that they're here, you know, and you have the potential problems with them being here because this is a community that's living here and we're the immediate ones that suffer. But at the same time, if they were to shut down, the impact of that would be devastating.
Thank you for that second clip. Do you want to say some words about the second clip and where you are with your film in terms of the progress?
Yeah, I guess the second clip for me was really something I personally have been doing was every time I go to my parents' house, which has been every weekend lately, I've been collecting newspapers. They save them for me. And about everyone has, you know, some sort of donation or something horrible that happened at either one of those refineries, or even articles that just share wetland recovery stuff as well. Anyways, all that is to say that I just wanted to include that because, you know, this is something being highlighted to the town, but as well as, you know, I don't know, not that people necessarily don't care, but it's kind of in the background of our lives. And like I was kind of reiterating in my essay, I really don't believe people care until it personally affects them or someone they love. And, you know, I guess with this film, I would really like to show my community that I really don't see how we can continue another 100 years living like this with all the potential problems they present. And super reiterating with what Ron Chapman had to say, that it is living with the devil, because at any point, you know, you could just be destroyed, I feel. But, and as of right now with my film, working with a lot of great other filmmakers and creative artists who are close friends of mine. So we have a lot of things this summer we're planning to film, more people to interview. And yeah, I'm very excited for the summer and to cut up some more as well.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of similarities between your work and Elaine's work, King Cole, like both dealing with communities that have single industry folks that support their economic base. So I'd be really interested to see, you know, your reaction to King Cole, really, because it's so similar, but different spaces in the South. So with that, we're going to move into our official Q&A section. Thank you, Martin, for being our chat master. If you do have a question for Lo and their essays and about their film, please drop it in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and start with a question, and I'm going to go ahead and popcorn between the audience and myself to make sure that we all, you know, get you all the questions that we need. So yeah, the first question for me is just, you know, I just love how you describe being outside, right? And this space that's become your sanctuary. You said being outside was your church, right? And I feel like that was really a powerful statement. It seems like in a lot of ways that the natural landscape, the swamp, the trees, the cypress leaves, the levee, the bayou, these are like integral parts of your identity, you know? So tell us more about like how this space has had an influence on your identity as a Southerner, right? Like how does these natural spaces have an impact, and what are these natural spaces looking like now?
Hmm. Um, well, to tell you, my mom and dad definitely did not want me inside the house. They did everything in their power to keep me outside, me and my sister and my brother. And I'm very grateful for that because, you know, without that, uh, I feel like I would just be like a TV head or, you know, video game kind of kid. Um, so yeah, you know, I think it really lends to a child's maturity to grow up outside because not only are you like, you know, just exploring and kind of seeing all what nature has to offer, but you're really like becoming intertwined with nature. And I feel like that's something that we lose as we become adults. You know, we kind of focus more on getting material things or, you know, plainly focus on surviving as well. And yeah, I'm just very grateful to have grown up in such a beautiful environment. St. Bernard is one of the most, I mean, it's like fisherman's paradise is also another quote. Um, and as far as what it's looking like today, unfortunately, I have to say, I feel like it's really becoming more um, built up by not only like more young families coming in, but also the film world. You know, The Ranch, which is a huge movie studio, is now out there. So you have people who don't know the parish at all coming in, and not saying that's a horrible negative thing, but I don't think people realize what like specialness there is there. And forgive me
Mhm.
for uh, words I know I'm not saying are correct, but you know, it's really just like so important to respect the environment that you were growing up in. And I really think children playing outside, that really like culminates, you know, them respecting in their future.
I mean, it's true. Like no one knows your sanctuary the way you do, right? And they don't
Hmm.
have that same connection or reverie. So it does make sense to have some kind of tension or external tension of like new folks coming in and maybe helping build up the base, but that might change the local community, that might change in local culture, and that could be a loss as well. So I totally resonated with that. Um, is there a question in the chat? If not, I can bounce back to my own question. Okay, we have one question. Let's open this chat up. Okay, so the question is, how do you think the refineries always being in the background of these people's lives affects everyone's mental state, their point of view compared to everywhere else? Thank you for that question.
Hmm. um, you know, I think it's kind of a stressor in some sense because what I didn't hit on in my essay was sometimes there would be random alarms going off and we wouldn't know what that means. You know, I think there is some disconnect between the refiner, as much as their PR team loves to sponsor and, you know, a lot of money is thrown at this community. Um, I believe there is some disconnect between the people and the refinery. Um,
Mhm.
and I think people definitely love to go more down the road where there are not any refineries, and really experience that nature versus being around, uh, you know, being around it already. And I guess what I'm
Mhm.
trying to say ultimately is that I think people really don't realize the negative and even physical effects because again that smell is super pungent when you cross it, and like people live
Mhm.
right there. The courthouse is literally right across the street from it. One of the best Italian food spot, Rocky and Carlos, shouts out to them. If anyone is trying to go to St. Bernard Parish, that is the best Italian food you're going to get. But
Writing it
it's like,
down.
you know, these places are like, you know, subtly affected by these refineries. And I think people really just push it down and subdue it, because it is so beautiful to live over there. And I don't know. I guess we'll speak to my mental state. I, love going down the road and versus, being by my mom's house, kind of. I mean, I still love going by the levee over there. But overall, everyone else's mental state, I mean, seems to be fine because, they're still living there, investing in properties. And I don't know, people really still love it over there. Just because I feel like as well, it's so close to New Orleans, yet outside of it that, you could just travel there whenever you want as well. So it kind of is the best of both worlds, but at the same time, it's pretty detrimental in my opinion.
Yeah, it's kind of like that imagery that you conjured in your essay, the alligator about 20 feet away, right? That this is floating by that could snap at you at any moment, but you kind of have this trust that it won't, knowing that it will eventually. So it's probably like the same kind of precarious situation of that. So yeah, speaking of that mental state, I know for you in your essay, you started off really with this idyllic, dreamy rendition of the space in your childhood. And then you had a moment that kind of just rocked you out of that space. And you were able to look at the same exact environment with a different lens, right? You were able to actually start smelling the air. You're able to see the green in the river. But before, it was kind of like a veil that was over you. And I kind of want to talk more about that experience of like waking up, right? Waking up to what's happening and how that's led you to your film, to galvanize you to do your film. That's the first part of the question. And the second half is, how are folks receiving this investigation that you're doing? Because a lot of folks, it's a love-hate relationship, right? I think Elaine said something about, trying to find the balance between loyalty and truth. What is that for you? So I repeat again, like what, from the moment that you were galvanized and you saw this explosion to actually, pressing the button on your first, film, what has that journey been like, and how has folks been receiving you in your local community?
Well, let me tell you, the beginning was hard. I definitely, thankfully, since my whole family lives in the parish, know a lot of, it's a very small community. They know a lot of people. My uncle was pretty well known. So that's who led me to finding Ron Chapman, who's the local historian, who was very open about covering all sides of the history and these refineries even building up as well. And as far as finding other people, it was a challenge just because I don't think I approached it the best way possible. Because I was coming at it from a more negative standpoint versus willing to hear all sides. And in that meaning, I would post on like Nextdoor or Facebook saying like, hey, has anything bad ever happened to y'all from these refineries? Like the stupidest thing. Anyways, definitely have grown from that. But it definitely led to this sort of like, just like, I guess, the antagonism that some comments were like, hey, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? What is this? Just because a lot of people work for these refineries. So I was threatening them in that way, essentially. And and that's not at all where I'm trying to come from. I think, just being a young new filmmaker, like I was kind of approaching it all the wrong. Nowadays, I'm able to get with people who are fighting against these refineries. I've been able to communicate better with people, I believe. And yeah, it's definitely been a journey, but I think it was all for a reason, to get me to where I am now. And it definitely was just a solo thing for me, creating this whole thing in 2017. I really just had a camera and a tripod. I used my phone as a voice recorder at one point. I was just very unprepared and did not take into account that I needed a team to do this. So I think now I've gotten my set team. I'm very impressed with what they can do, and I think it's going to be really good for us heading into the summer now.
Thank you for sharing that. We are at time, and I know we did start a little bit late. Do we have time for one question? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have time for one question. I'm getting word from my chat master. So yeah, a question is, Lo, as a member of the community, what solutions or approaches do you need to happen with the complexities of this refinery providing economic stability, but also being a source of natural devastation? You know, so what are some approaches that you feel can help untangle this kind of dangerous entanglement and dependency?
Well, I would love to, kind of how Gulf South for a Green New Deal is advancing for climate transition. I believe I believe it's possible for St. Bernard to do the same. Like I said, it's just essentially farmland pastures. So the land is already there.
Mm.
And I really believe that once the community is able to visually see, my film, which is what I would like to share with them, um, I really think there is community support for me to, and for, our future to transition into renewable energy sources. Mine being mainly solar energy, but I know there's, other sources as well. I just think, yeah, it's just a politics game at this point, because there are, foundations that go hand in hand with the refineries, and yeah, it's just about knocking those doors down and doing what's right. And I really think there is possible advancement for that climate transition.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, it is a very complicated, and it's going to take probably the next 100 years to fully, if we're making the decision now to protect our sanctuaries and resources, it's going to take another 100 years for us to even get back to where we were. So it is difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and there is the essay that you just shared with us in the chat. If you could just really quickly tell folks how to follow your work, where they can connect with you, and then we can start at the end.
Yes, I will actually be putting my Gmail in the chat. I'm so sorry, I'm off of social media.
Good
However,
for
I
you.
do plan to create a website this summer, as well as maybe an Instagram. But definitely a website is in the works. So if you'd like to email me, I can definitely email you the website as soon as that is up and running. And so sorry, there's no other way to follow. I just definitely, this is a mental thing for me. And, as much as I want this film out there, I believe there's other ways of doing it and putting it out there.
Well, good for you. You're not on social media, and hopefully we're able to connect with you through your email. And thank you so much, Lo, for sharing your sanctuary and all the images in your work in progress film Fence Line. With that, we're moving into our next music break, or actually, we're going to move directly into Building on Bones, where we will reflect on personal archives and how they affect us and how we can creatively reimagine personal archives. Followed by Queer Sanctuary, moderated by film programmer Trent Farrington. And at the end of the day, we're going to wrap with Propriety and Perversion, an essay reading by Hannah Miller, who's going to reflect on queer visibility and sanctuary building in the South. This concludes our essay reading for Lo Jackson. Thank you, Lo. Thank you, everyone who attended, and I will see you at Building on Bones.